F1 is all about the competition and the close battles, but sometimes the emotions and the adrenaline can extract the best out of a driver. That is why some of the rivalries have gone to an extent of the drivers verbally attacking each other. There can be only one champion, and in a world where the strong eat the weak, there is no place for whining and complaining. So let's see who are the fiercest and the most anticipated rivalries that have taken place in the F1 sport. 2016 Hamilton vs Rosberg. Let's start with something more recent, and that is the battle between the Mercedes teammates in 2016. This was the season in which Hamilton entered with 3 titles won, 2 with Mercedes and 1 with McLaren, but he met a strong competitor in his teammate Nico Rosberg. Even before this season, at the 2015 US GP, we saw Hamilton and Rosberg interacting in the cool-down room by Hamilton throwing his hat at Rosberg, only for the German to return this action. But the 2016 season was boiling ever since its beginning, and the first major incident between these 2 drivers was in Barcelona when both of them crashed after Hamilton tried to complete an overtake but went over the grass and took Rosberg with him. During the Austrian GP, both of these drivers crashed again, but this time it was Rosberg who took the thicker end of things. Hamilton managed to win the race, but Rosberg dropped from P1 to P4, and on top of that, he was found guilty of the crash. The season culminated in Abu Dhabi, where all Rosberg had to do was finish on the podium. Still, Hamilton refused to obey the team orders and tried to back up Rosberg to finish below 4th. This move was in vain, as Rosberg was able to win the race and secure his first and last F1 championship. Just 5 days after his maiden championship, Rosberg decided to retire due to the psychological impact that the battle with Hamilton had on his mental health. 1997 Schumacher vs Villeneuve. It was Schumacher's second season with Ferrari, as the team had struggled to get back on top. Schumacher was one of the team's main jokers for this goal, and the fact that he and Villeneuve got into a very close fight for the championship just goes to show how dedicated he was to his goal. Although he was disqualified from the championship after the results were already familiar, Schumacher did give Villeneuve a run for his money. It was an intense season, but there have been a couple of boiling points, such as the crash at the last race of the season, the Jerez circuit in Spain. Schumacher entered the race with a 1-point advantage over Villeneuve, and he had to finish ahead of him or both of them retired if he was to win his second championship. Schumacher had attempted a dirty move on Villeneuve, as the Williams driver was very close to passing him at the dry sack corner. By braking later than Schumacher, Villeneuve held the inside line and was ahead on the track when Schumacher turned in on him, resulting in a collision with his front right wheel and Villeneuve's left-hand side pod. Villeneuve was able to continue the race, finishing 3rd behind Hakkinen and Coulthard, but was still able to win the championship. Later on, Schumacher was found guilty of his attempt and was disqualified from the Drivers' Championship, but was able to keep his wins out of the season. 2007 Raikkonen vs McLaren. This is one of the rare cases where the top 3 candidates were so close to the championship, and only 1 point stood between the championship winner Raikkonen and Hamilton and Alonso, who finished P2 and P3 respectively. This season marked one of the fiercest rivals in McLaren, and Alonso having to leave McLaren at the end of the season due to the circumstances developing with the young rookie Hamilton. It was Raikkonen's first season with Ferrari, and the rivalry was something that was ongoing behind the scenes as well as on the track. There was a huge controversy called Spygate involving Ferrari and McLaren, which led to McLaren being excluded from the Constructors' Championship, so Ferrari was able to win the Constructors' Championship as early as Spa. But the Drivers' Championship was far from a done deal, and we've seen very close battles between the top 3 drivers. Raikkonen was able to win 6 races, while Hamilton and Alonso both shared 4 wins. Overall, it was a very close battle between Raikkonen and both McLaren drivers, given the fact that both McLaren cars were fighting fiercely against each other too. 2010 Championship fight. Yet again, multiple drivers were in the mix to win the championship leading into the last race in Abu Dhabi. Apart from the championship winner Sebastian Vettel, there were some other candidates for the title, such as his teammate Webber, Hamilton, and Fernando Alonso. But the closest one to him was Fernando Alonso, and the fact that he finished 7th in the last race in Abu Dhabi, not being able to pass the Renault of Pavlov, has made it even easier for Vettel to win the championship. For things to be worse for Alonso, he entered the Abu Dhabi GP as a leader in the Drivers' Championship with 246 points, ahead of Webber, who had 238 points, and Vettel with 231 points. Hamilton was also in mathematical contention with 222 points, 24 points behind Alonso, with the maximum number of points that could be obtained from the Abu Dhabi GP being 25. Sebastian Vettel was able to grab the pole position ahead of Hamilton and Alonso, with Webber lining up 5th just behind Jenson Button. The top 2 spots haven't changed, and one huge determinant of how the championship has ended was the Renault of Vitaly Petrov. It is considered one of the biggest middle fingers to the championship contenders, and although Alonso should know better and get rid of the Renault on his own, that wasn't the case this time. Had Alonso passed Petrov, he would have had a chance to push further on the grid, as he needed to finish within the 8-point difference with Webber. However, Ferrari's early pit stop meant that they were worried about Webber and finishing ahead of him more than they were worried about Vettel, and the young German took things into his own hands and decided the outcome of the 2010 championship. At the end, Alonso did finish ahead of Webber, but wasn't able to do anything when it came to Vettel's charge. This season has marked the youngest F1 championship ever. 2008 Massa vs Hamilton. This was one of the most awkward podium celebrations of all time. Felipe Massa won the race, and in order for him to win the championship, Hamilton needed to finish P6 or below. Hamilton has had a troublesome race, and he was running at P6 on the last lap of the race. But the race itself was a very troublesome one, with rain being a major factor in the finishing positions. There was heavy rain on lap 69, which allowed Vettel to overtake Hamilton and put him in P6, the position that isn't bringing him the championship. It was truly a massive hit for the McLaren driver, as he saw his championship's hopes lost in just a matter of seconds. However, one driver ahead of them was on the dry compound tyre, and that was Timo Glock. His Toyota struggled for grip, and both Vettel and Hamilton were able to pass Glock at the final corners of the track. This meant that Vettel finished P4 while Hamilton finished P5, enough for him to secure the championship. Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost. Both of these spectacular drivers put on outstanding performances in the 1989 and 1990 seasons. In Formula 1, they were teammates in McLaren, meaning that they had a lot to prove to the world when it comes to who is better. Senna was chasing his second championship, while Prost had won 2 titles prior to joining McLaren. The 1989 championship was decided at Suzuka, and prior to the start of the race, Prost was ahead of Senna in the Drivers' Championship. With Prost removing the gurney flap to gain extra speed, he was able to wipe out Senna's pole position advantage at the beginning of lap 1, and it took Senna a removal of that same flap and 40 laps to catch Prost in the race. Both drivers collided with each other after the infamous 130R turn, which is an ultra-high-speed left curve turn. The next corner after the 130R turn is the chicane, which was the second slowest corner on the circuit. Senna's high downforce settings meant that he had much more speed in the low corners compared to Prost, and when he dive-bombed to pass him, Prost saw this move and closed the door. Eventually they crashed, and Prost was able to win the championship that year. In 1990, it was deja vu, with Prost now driving a Ferrari. Senna, on the other hand, had the lead this time, and with Prost taking the lead immediately after starting P2, Senna crashed into him, securing his second championship of his career. 2021 Championship. There are rare moments in F1 when both protagonists for the title go with the same number of points in the championship battle in the last race of the season. That happened in 2021 with Verstappen and Hamilton going with exactly the same amount of points in Abu Dhabi, 369.5. Verstappen took the pole position, and although he lost it immediately and wasn't able to recover it until the last lap, he did it when it counted the most. many were left wondering as to how Verstappen was able to keep the lead with Hamilton after the Silverstone GP when Hamilton sent him into the barriers, and the Hungarian GP when Bottas crashed into Verstappen, with the Dutchman finishing P9. Still, it was a maestro-like season, and we saw very close battles in Jeddah, Brazil, Kota, and practically every other race the caravan has visited. Verstappen switched from hard to soft compound tires as the safety car exited the race, hoping that he would have a chance now that Hamilton had not changed his tires. Although it was just one lap at the end, Verstappen was able to grab it in his own favor and win the race on the last lap, clinching himself the maiden championship. What do you think about the most intense F1 championship seasons? Let us know in the comments below.